Good morning. Welcome to the forecast discussion for April 17th, 2012. It is 8:20 a.m. and temperatures are already in the mid 60s to lower 70s as winds shift to the northwest as a cold front starts to move through. The winds today are going to pick up anywhere from 5 to 15 miles per hour, and that is going to mean some trouble for the northern mid-Atlantic, especially for much of New Jersey and eastern Pennsylvania. And the reason why is because it is so dry, and when you have very dry conditions and winds coming in from the northwest, that means that your fire danger is elevated. And if you're going out camping or if you are just out and about for today, please use some caution because it won't take much to start a pretty significant brush fire throughout the northern mid-Atlantic. So what else can we expect for today? Well, the good news is that temperatures will not be as warm as what we saw yesterday. I know we weren't ready just yet for mid to upper 80s, even a few lower 90s that developed throughout the Philadelphia and New York City metropolitan area. But for today, because the cold front is moving through now, temperatures are going to be held back just a little bit in the upper 60s to the mid 70s for this afternoon. And you can also already feel it. The humidity is rapidly falling off, making for pleasant weather conditions for this afternoon. Now, I just want to show the drought conditions that are setting up. Now, this is just for New Jersey, but the same conditions are also being experienced in Pennsylvania and New York and also Connecticut, with significant drought conditions throughout the entire northern mid-Atlantic. In the example of New Jersey, departures are over 6 inches below normal throughout much of the state. A few exceptions would be southern New Jersey, where we're around 5.5 inches below normal for this time of year. This is becoming a serious problem here, and it's going to become even worse of a problem as we move forward. In fact, I discussed this in an article on NewJersey.com that just came out today, where this process is just going to get worse and worse as we move through the summer months, because we really don't have any mechanism to change this weather pattern and produce a long-term significant change in the rainfall potential heading out for the next several months. Of course, there is potential for some rain this weekend, as I say that. So we're going to have to watch this and see exactly how this unfolds. But when you're 7 inches below normal in portions of central New Jersey, moving into the summer months, that is a bad combination setting up. And it's going to be something we're going to have to keep an eye on as we move forward. Taking a look at the surface map, you can see our cold front moving through. Of course, there isn't much in the way of precipitation. Skies are clear for the most part throughout the Philadelphia and New York City metropolitan area. Once this cold front moves through, you will notice a difference, one, in the winds coming in from the northwest and west, picking up anywhere from between 10 to 15 miles per hour. And you'll also notice a marked drop-off in the humidity, especially as you move towards the coast. You're already seeing that over much of the Philadelphia metropolitan area this morning, and that will spread into the New York City metropolitan area and much of Connecticut as we move on through the late morning hours and early afternoon hours. High pressure will take control and remain in control for the rest of the week, providing excellent weather conditions. Now let's take a look at the infrared satellite picture, and you can see our cold front moving through. We have one disturbance over the southeast, and look at this disturbance over the Atlantic. This is a cold core system. It's not tropical in nature, but it is pretty impressive. And the reason why I'm pointing this out is because this upper level low is going to have a major impact on the weather pattern moving forward. It will slow down the weather pattern and set up the potential for some rain heading into Saturday night, Sunday, Monday, and possibly even into Tuesday for the northern mid-Atlantic. The position of this upper level low and how it interacts with the polar jet stream up here is going to be a key factor in the forecast as we move forward for this weekend. So let's take a look at the model guidance using the European model guidance from the Penn State EWAL website. Again, an excellent website for all your model needs. As we move in for this afternoon and evening, you can see our upper level low setting up over the Atlantic. You can see our polar jet stream is rather progressive in nature. We really don't have any deep troughs or very powerful ridges in place. We have almost a zonal pattern over much of the polar jet stream here, and that means that the weather pattern is rather progressive. High pressure is going to be in control. High pressure will remain in control for tomorrow, providing excellent weather conditions. A little bit back towards normal, temperatures in the mid to upper 60s for much of the region. As we move towards Thursday, high pressure in control once again. Again, pretty much tranquil weather conditions for much of the rest of this week. Now, here we have our disturbance diving south, and you can see our upper level low starts to interact with the polar jet stream and starts to create this trough in the Canadian Maritimes. And that's going to be important because by the time we head into Saturday, that trough starts to become established, the whole pattern starts to slow down, our upper level low starts to cut off, clouds start to increase along the east coast as this cold front stalls out and gradually becomes a warm front, and this low pressure system develops in the Gulf of Mexico. And with a low pressure system developing in the Gulf of Mexico, that means moisture is able to ride up from the Gulf of Mexico up the east coast. Now, by Sunday, this is where it gets very important. Our upper level trough starts to develop and solidify. Our upper level disturbance starts to develop over the southeast and intensify. And we get a nice warm front boundary set up right along the east coast where moisture is able to ride up and fall over much of the New York City and Philadelphia metropolitan area down towards the southern mid-Atlantic as well. And notice at 850 millibars we have a nice tight thermal gradient that supports basically periods of moderate to heavy rainfall potentially developing on Sunday. We're going to keep an eye on the development of this trough. And then by Sunday night into Monday, you can see that upper level low develops. On Monday, that upper level low intensifies, sets up over the mid-Atlantic. We have a very strong low pressure system developing along the east coast. And that, of course, means periods of moderate to heavy rainfall, potentially Sunday night through Monday. Now, I say potentially here because we're going to see exactly how this upper level low develops and how this upper level trough around the Canadian Maritimes develops and how this entire setup evolves because timing is key in the development of this upper level low. You can already see there are some mild differences from yesterday on exactly how this storm forms. So there's a lot of volatility in this forecast and a lot to figure out before we head into the weekend as far as the potential and development of this storm. But one thing I can say is that unlike the previous weekends, Sunday and Monday looks to be a lot wetter than what we've been experiencing and potentially much cooler, especially if we get this onshore flow. Temperatures will most likely be in the 50s and lower 60s rather than the 70s and 80s. Once this storm exits out, it's going to intensify over New England, but it will lift north. So Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday of next week looks to be a little bit cooler with disturbances rotating through, but not unseasonably cold. Temperatures basically in the 60s to lower 70s, pretty much near normal, with the threat of a few scattered showers here and there each day as these disturbances move through next week. So we got to keep an eye on this weekend and the potential for a major storm potentially for Sunday. Again, there's a lot of volatility in the forecast, a lot to figure out. Finally, I just want to point out that as we move in towards the end of next week, take a look at our polar jet stream. It is starting to lift further and further north, as is normal for this time of year. But also notice below the polar jet stream, we're seeing more and more of these upper level loads getting cut off and spinning to the south of the polar jet stream. That's pretty much normal for when you have a cold stratosphere in place. You get these cold pools at times developing, and it's a feature we're going to keep an eye on over the Pacific because it could influence our pattern moving forward. That is the forecast for today. I'm your meteorologist, Stephen DiMartino. Of course, you can follow the latest weather information at nynjpaweather.com and nynjpaweather on Twitter and Facebook. Have a wonderful day. Stay safe out there.